So we're in Oakland, California. We're a small health sciences institution. So and we're private. So but my background, I started my career as a teacher at a community college at Ohlone College. So we have a very different set of issues. So for us, retention is not an issue almost at all.
Is it profit, non-profit?
It's nonprofit. However, well, having said that, I don't get completely off the hook because we are a nonprofit, but our school is owned by Sutter Health. So, but we're nonprofit. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
So,
It's working.
okay, thank you. So I was hired at Samuel Merritt. My background is in educational multimedia. I did a lot of, first I started in television, and then I went back and got a degree and started doing multimedia training, and then education. I went back and got another degree and started doing educational game design, and then the whole .com thing with online education, and I wrote a book called Developing an Effective Online Course. And then, but my real passion, the sort of the motivation behind my work is Douglas Engelbart, who's the inventor of the mouse, and this is not it, but the computer mouse. And he had an idea for how do you use technology to augment collective intelligence. So there was the way technology's been developed, really, Microsoft and most of the technology we use is focused on enhancing individual capability, right? But really is very bad at doing how do we augment collective capability. And so he's been my mentor since 1985. He passed away last year, but so it was a long relationship, and we co-wrote a book called The Engelbart Hypothesis. And the hypothesis is that technology can help humans collectively enhance our collective capability. Something that is just now starting to resonate with the technology community. So everybody was really developing the personal computer, and he was saying, of course in those days it wasn't called that, but he was saying, no, we need to be investing in cloud computing. Now it's finally called cloud computing, and there's a resonance that yes, data should be stored collectively rather than individually. So that's my background. So I came to Samuel Merritt having failed at a startup, and I was sort of sitting home, licking your wounds, because I know you tell your students, well, you have to try even if you fail, blah, 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 but nobody tells you how horrible it actually is to fail. And I was just feeling like, oh my God, we wrote this book, and it got sort of critically acclaimed, but then we were attacked by people who had a different point of view, and then the business failed, and I'm like, ah. And I get a call from Samuel Merritt University saying, can you come and take the place of our institutional researcher who's going on maternity leave? And I'm like, I have zero background in institutional research. But she said, no, but you're as part of this book that I wrote, Developing an Effective Online Course for the California Virtual Campus, which was a consortium of community colleges way back in the .com money days. And I put all the content online. And she's like, no, but you're an expert in learning outcomes, so you can do this job because we need somebody who can manage the learning outcomes part of it. So I'm like, okay, I can probably manage learning outcomes. So that's my background. So if you can see that it's not a traditional way that I started thinking about how do we conduct assessment. And it was 3 months before our WASC site visit. So we were being accredited, and she had collected all this data, and so my job was to make some sense of all the data that they had collected. Now, we're a healthcare institution, and so the provost comes to me and he says, I want you to conduct a diagnostic on this data. Diagnostic? Like, what am I going to say? It has the flu? I mean, that word had never, it was not in my lexicon of, you know, how do you think about the world of creating diagnostics? I am a problem solver, yes, I can, but, so I looked at the data and I massaged it, I came up with all these numbers and, you know, made all these diagnostics, and then I said to my, the assistant vice president, who was my boss, and I said, you know, the thing is that we're crunching the numbers and we're getting some insight, but it's not really meaningful, and that you've spent so much time and money on this that why don't you actually do something that will change student learning outcomes? And she said, well, what do you mean? So that's what I'm going to show you. So, and our question was, how do you feel, because the CPR said, the preliminary visit said you don't have a culture of assessment, which was true. So my job was in 3 months to build a culture of assessment. And shockingly, we did. So when I first started, I would walk into the programs, I would meet with the deans and chairs, and I said, let's talk about assessment. And they'd be like, you know, we don't even want to talk about it. So I thought, well, let's try and make it, you know, I have a background in game design, let's add some fun into it. And this is what our spreadsheets look like, right, that we gave people, you know, mapping our course learning outcomes, which you call SLOs, to our program learning outcomes. And I just started imagining how could we make this more fun. And I said, well, let's make a prototype that could, and I had this vision, which I'm about to show you. And she said, well, how much is it going to cost? And I said, I don't know, how about $10,000? And the next day, $10,000 appeared. That's the great thing about being in a small private school. And also, my boss, Annie Bamford, also had the vision to dare to do something kind of risky, because our school is very conservative in terms of, first of all, every single program is accredited, has a specialized accreditation, so we have nursing, podiatry, et cetera. So we have basically 13 accreditation processes, and we're very standards driven, and the standards are fairly detailed and rigorous. So, so that's the context. So the idea, and you know, healthcare professionals, you know, experimentation is a very different paradigm than sort of the action research kind of methodology that we use in education, right? Because you don't just try something new while you're, oh, I think I'll just try cutting this out with the surgery, right? It's a different process. So trying something new was a tough fit, but we found that we had a huge change in our culture of assessment, which, and when the WASP people came 4 months later, they said, you had changed your culture of assessment at Mach speed, meaning breaking the sound barrier, because we really got faculty engaged. So each of you has a card. If you didn't get a card, raise your hand. There's a card. Who else didn't get one? Okay, and so there's a color on the top. See? So what this map here is the rows are our institutional learning outcomes. So the faculty, so before I got there, they had already defined their institutional learning outcomes. Do you guys have institutional learning outcomes? Yes. Okay. And the columns are program learning outcomes. And the color shows where those two intersect. So the first row in column 1 is compassion. Program learning outcome that is aligned with compassion, is aligned with ethics, critical thinking, and clinically competent, nothing else. Does that make sense? Okay, so now we're going to do a dress rehearsal. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this as a music. And when you see your color up here, I want you to stand up and hold your card up.
Didn't notice.
Got it? Okay, so now we're gonna try it. I'm gonna speed it up a little bit, even though you said it was quick. Maybe I should slow it down. Okay, I can slow it down. We're gonna slow it down. And so, like, part of the white space, right? Like, you hear these long pauses is because it's actually playing those notes or not playing those notes. So it's giving the timing. So it really is, you really hear, and I'm gonna in a minute show you a different curriculum, and then you can see how different programs.
I'm sorry, what are we looking for exactly?
Color.
Oh, okay, so
We're going.
dance, yeah.
What's the direction that it's going?
Because it's really hard to see on this screen.
Yeah.
See those boxes? Color?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Color
And
change.
now it's gonna play this one next. Now it's going to the top, and it's playing down this top. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now it does.
Okay.
Yeah, much better. Yeah.
So, okay. So, we're gonna start from the beginning. Oh, sorry. Okay, ready? On your marks, get set, go. So now we're up to this third column. Great. Okay, so now that now one of the things that happens is now I've got your complete attention. You've really seriously looked at this map, and now I'm going to ask you, so is anyone here a nurse? No, okay, but we've all been to a nurse and we kind of know what nurses do. Is this how you would want your nurse to be trained? What imbalances do you see there?
Compassion.
Okay, so compassion, right, so this is mapped, we have their program learning outcomes to our institutional learning outcomes. And they said they have one program learning outcome that maps to compassion. Now, is that what you would want for your nurses?
It's not something that you teach. It's something that you're coming to the program with.
Well, I think the Nursing Board of Association would differ with that. Like, you actually can teach people even if they don't feel the actual compassion, there are certain actions and behaviors that you can manifest that show compassion. So, like one example is not being judgmental. Well, you shouldn't have slammed the door on your hand when he broke in. So we see that we have one compassion, ethics, we have two aligned with compassion. Critical thinking, we've got 4 program learning outcomes. The light blue one is clinically competent. We've got 5, evidence-based inquiry. So is that making sense on how to read it? And then down here we have the lonely information technology, which now we're going to call informatics. Sort of more like information technology, informatics. How do you read information? How do you access it? So is this what we would want for a nurse in the modern day? What's missing? What's weak?
More skills.
More compassion. And I would argue, I would also like my nurse to have a little more information technology. And since, so much of medicine is advancing at such a fast pace, and so much of what we currently do is not evidence-based, but is really tradition-based, particularly in the nursing profession. I would actually like my nurse to know the latest research. You'd like to see more ethics.
Yeah.
So this is the kind of conversations that this allows us to have. And our school, because we're so health-oriented and because everybody loves to get to the weeds first before the forest, right? They just love to talk about this little detail and the dates and test scores. And this actually brings the conversation up to like, what are we really doing here? And we get to have the conversations and the big debates about how do we teach compassion. And then there's a sharing of knowledge. But then we can take this curriculum mapping a lot farther than that. So this is the way to sort of engage faculty, and now you've got both your left and right brain thinking about this issue. Now we can drill down to these gazillion maps that I've made. This is the same program, but at a much more detailed level. So at the top, you see, this is about getting in the way of this. See, compassion, no, I can't do it. Compassion, ethics, critical thinking. So those are our institutional learning outcomes, and we color-coded them. And then each of the groups are the program learning outcomes. So the first one is demonstrate respect for the dignity of the individual patient. And that is, you can see that it's aligned with compassion, ethics, critical thinking, and clinically competent. So it's another view of that same map. But if you see, there's a lot of little black dots under that. And these little black dots are, in fact, the full text of the program learning outcome and the full text of the course learning outcome. And in addition, we have actual samples of evidence of student learning. So we have test scores and retention rates and grades till the cows come home, right? And we wasn't teaching us about the quality of the care, right? Because it's a lot different to check off A, B, and C about how to treat a patient than it is to actually treat a patient. And so these are links to. So here we have an actual evidence of a poster presentation done by a student that was accepted into a national conference. And this is showing that the faculty member decided this is a sample of excellence of student learning that demonstrates inherent respect for the individual patient. And this same evidence also demonstrates other things such as effective communication. So we really started to look at qualitative rather than quantitative assessment of student learning. And we just piloted, we have a doctorate program, and we just started piloting with them, where faculty members can actually upload so they can upload not only the evidence of student learning. So here you see at the top is the program learning outcome, the course learning outcome, evidence of student learning, which they link directly from our course management system, the assignment that the teacher wrote for the students, the rubric that she created, as well as the genomic resource that she used as the content. So it was a web resource. So that this way other faculty members can start sharing their assignments, their rubrics, and even their content.
So each black dot has each of those things?
Could have each of those things.
Okay.
So the faculty members, each black dot has a course learning outcome, but we do not have evidence of student learning. Well, actually, I just picked one that does, but I'll pick one that doesn't. They don't all have evidence of student learning assignments and rubrics associated yet. And a huge portion of our curriculum is still standardized testing. And in fact, our board exams, which is the measure of success in our field, right? Like that is a standardized test. So this is just a new way of introducing qualitative assessment that's actually driving a huge change in pedagogy. And also the other thing that this has done is it's really changed, it's facilitated, we've undergone huge changes in our institution in the last 3 years. So, but I'm going to show you one more thing first, because we also can map to our standards. So we have, QSIN is the Quality Safety in Nursing Education, and it's not an accreditation academic, but it is accreditation for being eligible for grants and other privileges. So all intents and purposes it is. And so what we did was we showed QSIN that we mapped our, their standards, which is patient-centered care, teamwork and collaboration, evidence-based practice, quality improvement, safety and informatics, as shapes, and then we mapped it here. And we can also then go down, so when they came, it was like, oh, you want to see how we mapped our curriculum to yours? Here it is. And here is the sonification of that. And so, meaning we put the data to sound and we can play their shapes to our curriculum. So here you see their standards, and these are our program learning outcomes. And I'll just play it quickly for you. Oh.
Too slow, huh?
It's not playing.
This is the $10,000 system?
Yeah, well, so we got the first $10,000 and we did it all in Excel because they had done their mapping in Excel, and so we did it in Visual Basic. But then, because how many people here think I'm kind of a detail-oriented person who's very organized? Yeah, not. And so, the idea of having to manage Excel spreadsheets was like beyond my skill set. Like, what? What? So I said, well, how about we move it to be a web-based system so that now when you make a change, there is only one true learning outcome. So there's not, well, wait, which version do you have? Which is what was going on. And then we also can drill down. So because like a lot of our learning outcomes are very general, so we actually mapped it down to the more modular level. So you have here, integrate theories from nursing research and practice to facilitate patient-centered care. And then these are the knowledge, skills, and attitudes developed by QSIN, the accreditor, right? That are more measurable. So we mapped it big and small. So anyway, and we have tons more views in here. I mean, we map this every which way till Friday. And what's really nice is when the accreditors come, is like when the specialty accreditors come, instead of spending hours and hours. And so I took this class that I guess you also took the
Assessment Leadership Academy.
Assessment Leadership Academy. Thank you. Don't you dare tell anybody I couldn't remember the name. It's like this class is all full of team spirit. So I asked the three of the WASP teachers of that class. One, I asked Barbara Wright, who I think was the vice president or something like that. And I said, well, how much qualitative evidence do you need, right? Because we've got all this quantitative. And she said, very little. In a small class, you want 1 or 2 samples of excellent student work, because then you can triangulate that against the grade. So you say, if in a class of 500, she said you would want 8 samples. So very small amount of work. And so here's the thinking behind it, which is, if this is the most excellent student work you have, and it's good, then then that's fine. That's an indicate, and you triangulate that with your grades, and in our case with our board scores, and we're okay with that. But if your best example of student evidence is bad, then imagine what the C work looks like.
Yeah.
And so, and one of the things that really started to happen, and this is where we had this huge leap in terms of why WAS said we had transformed our culture of assessment. Because we thought before assessment was grades, test scores, or even a signature assignment. We interpreted it saying you have this signature assignment, the students have to write a paper on ethics. And if they get above 70, then we're saying that they meet the ethics criteria. Well, we transformed that and we said that you had to demonstrate that only one or two signature examples, authentic examples of student work met that criteria. And so what happened was I had one, and I'm not remembering exactly what the SLO was, but it was something like student will analyze quantitative and qualitative data, something like that. And then the teacher hands me a test that shows that students can translate ounces into milliliters. And I'm like, oh, you know what? Do you think that fulfills the word analyze? Right? That would be a procedure. And so she immediately got it. Like, oh. So it really sort of helped deepen the level of learning and teaching and learning that was happening. And then now we export these course learning outcomes into the course learning management system we use, so that when the faculty opens up their course, they have their outcomes in there. And then they can link it with assignments and rubrics and grades. So we're just starting that experiment. That part's not going as wonderfully as we wished, but it's sort of changing the culture of thinking about authentic assessment. And then we have our podiatric medicine folks, they say, but most of our work is multiple choice tests, and in fact, their board exams are multiple choice tests. So how do we deal with that? And they've come up with really creative solutions. Like one of the things is the students every year submit to scholarly journals. And these are doctoral students, right? And so even though those articles that they submit for the scholarly journals are not part of their coursework, it's actually extracurricular or co-curricular. So we incorporate the co-curricular activities into fulfilling the course learning outcomes with authentic evidence. So, so this is where we are, and okay, so we made these repositories, and this was just showing a sample of meeting where instead of people before they were checking their cell phone and not being present, they become really engaged. And this is for the CUSIN, they have shapes, so I gave them pipe cleaners and they all made their shapes. And they had to play in the CUSIN. But then, this is the other view I didn't show you, which is we can actually have the entire university on one screen. So we can compare and contrast how well we're doing at an institutional level, meeting our institutional outcomes. And, well, this is the coolest part, is you can drill down. So anyone from any department can drill down and see the assignment, the rubric, and the evidence of another faculty in another department. So it's really helping with interprofessional collaboration in it. And I think on most campuses, there's a few like real superstar teachers who have the secret sauce. And so they're also the ones who post their assignments, their rubrics, and the evidence of student learning. And so then the other faculty can secretly peek in and see what they're doing without having to ask. And so it's, I mean, they're happy to share, but the culture is a funny thing, yeah.
I just got curious when you started talking about individual faculty. So do you carry that theory, in the theory of you just need a few representative examples to the actual faculty in actual classes, so you're not getting information from every single faculty, just a few?
Correct.
Yes.
Right. And
representative examples.
Yes, and we are moving towards getting everybody to participate because this is what happened. So before, assessment was this very tedious bureaucratic thing that would take the dean or chair in their program review hours and hours to collect all this stuff, and they'd be very disgruntled about it. Now they don't, now that's sort of more automated. And we're actually starting to work on getting a system so that we can just grab the institutional research and just dump it into the program review automatically. Like, you know, a lot of the stuff on retention rates and really trying to make the program review really about, okay, so what are you going to do creatively to improve student learning? And so we've ended up, the faculty organization actually changed our policy. So we've changed every fundamental policy we have, which is rank and promotion. We changed to include scholarship of teaching and learning. And then we also include scholarship of teaching and learn, our scholarship, which, you know, for us, that's a big deal because it's, you know, doctoral programs. So, you know, how many scholarly articles you publish affects your rank. And now we're saying that actually your reflective practice in scholarship of teaching and learning counts towards scholarship. And the faculty organizations voted, and I think that had they played the game, what was she was saying, if they, not many of them were paying attention, if they had been engaged, I'm not sure they would have done this, but they all voted to have every 3 years peer review of their teaching. And so what we're thinking about doing is making a portfolio where they can use the CMI to show only their best work. So not everything they've done, but just here's what I've done, and this is their portfolio which they can use for evaluation and for ranking promotion. Does that make sense? We're thinking about that, we haven't done it yet. And yeah, so the faculty can upload their stuff. We've changed all these. This program has been incredibly successful. The provost gave us some of his research money because he had money for faculty to do research. He gave us some money for faculty to, instead of doing typical scholarly research, they engage in a very short action research project where they change one assignment or one learning module and then collect evidence about how well that went and then write it up in a report. And the first year we got 20% of the faculty to participate and complete that research project. And we had huge improvements and we're starting to find trends. Like one of the things in our clinical, since we're healthcare, one of the things that we found, for instance, students do peer videotape each other doing a physical exam on each other, and then they do peer review online, and then they do a self-reflection. And before, it wasn't videotaped, right? So the teacher would watch them, the teacher would give the review, and we found huge improvements in student success just by adding the peer review, videotape peer review. And then other things is like the flipped classroom stuff around, we're having really interesting findings about what happens if you put your lecture on PowerPoint and what happens if you reduce it, you know, issues around timing, around the way you structure your lectures, et cetera, because we're getting so many of these little micro studies and unlike other research where people are asked to do something original, we're asking people to look at what the other faculty did and repeat that same study, so that we're really starting to find trends of what's working and what's not. So it's had a huge, you know, it's not only this, but this whole, it's just transformed the culture to thinking about assessment from bureaucratic number crunching to actually looking. And then the last thing, this is so exciting, one of the groups decided that instead of looking, they had been doing, for the past 5 years, they've been looking at their curriculum and refining it. And their curriculum is very heavily regulated by their governing board anyway. And so they said, well, this year, instead of going over our curriculum yet again, let's try a change in pedagogy. And so all of the entire faculty are going to try doing new pedagogy and see what results they have for one lesson, not one class, one lesson. And that is going to be their program review. So I thought that was kind of fun and exciting, so we'll see how that goes. And another program decided they're going to start mapping all their courses and starting every course to have a rubric that's standardized in the system. And that was going to be their program. And so we're really kind of, it allowed people to, I mean, you sort of have to start with getting the mapping done, but then you can really go beyond it and let people be creative. And I have this saying that people, I haven't gotten fired yet, which is they'll tell me that like we exported the learning outcomes into Canvas, our learning management system, and we wanted them to link them to assignments and rubrics. And I said, well, I think that's, time consuming and bureaucratic and has no benefit. So I say, well, if you think that something you're doing is bureaucratic or stupid or has no benefit for student learning, then stop doing it. And if anyone comes to you and they say, well, but so-and-so is going to tell me you have to do, I said, well, so-and-so comes to you or anyone says to you, why aren't you doing blah, 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 you say because Valerie Landau told me to stop doing it. and I say that repeatedly, like at every single meeting. Like if you're doing something that you think is bureaucratic and is not enhancing student learning, stop doing it. And if you get in trouble, blame it on me. I told you to stop doing it. And it's really had a freeing effect on people to start taking assessment, because the point of assessment is to really, assessment really means sit beside. And to really, the whole point of it is to improve student learning and like all the big fancy software that they're selling at conventions and stuff, like a lot of the WASC consultants have been telling me that people collect data and data and data and data and data, but they don't actually do anything with the data. They don't change, they don't improve student learning. And WASC has been coming down hard on those things. So I encourage you to really try and have fun with assessment and really try and adopt a culture of, it's really all about our students. And if you think that what the person is asking you to do is dumb, stop doing it and do something good. Let's blame it on me.
Where did you build the mapping program in? Did you say Visual Basic? Or?
Well, no, we did the original prototype in Visual Basic, and then we developed it in HTML5 and PHP. And actually, if your institution is interested in doing a beta test, and when I say beta test, I don't mean is there a glitch in the software? I mean, is there a glitch in the culture? Right? Like, is this adaptable? We would be happy to work with you to, put your mappings into this software and see if you have the same kind of transformative results that we've had at Santa Clara. Because I think that, just by engaging people at this level, it kind of brings home the idea of this is what we say we're doing and this is what we're actually doing.
What was the overall cost investment
Of building it? I don't know, because I don't know. I did a lot of begging, and so like when QSIN came, I would go to the dean and say, oh, I could build this such a cool thing. I could put the stars in. I need this much money for that. So I did it like scrappy. I didn't get like I had a fund. I just go around begging the deans and chairs. And so when they want something, oh, you want that done? Yeah, that'll be $5,000 or $1,000. And it's really embarrassing. But but now that it's built, it takes our programmer like 4 or 5 hours to set up a new instance, and so he just needs to get paid. So a very small, like probably for $1,000, then you can use this system. And then there's some training. I mean, the training is really easy we just basically, we had been doing it from Excel spreadsheets, but now that you told me that you could use Google Docs,
I wasn't me.
Oh, the light is on, I can't see.
It's dark.
Yeah, now that the Google Docs thing, that, so if you, how do you have your SLOs now?
Mary Jo, can you speak on
We have a map on the course SLO addendums that are addendums to the course outlook record, and a map from the course SLO to the program SLO to the institution SLO.
Like in a Word document?
Yeah, it's not, we don't have a database yet, so we don't, that's.
Well, there you
have to
go.
move
Here's
it
your database. So this is a database. And I mean, it has every kind of report. Any report you want to run, it runs. And then if there's one that it doesn't run, then I beg for more money and say, oh, let's run this one. Like this one, I never saw the value of, but a lot of the science faculty are like, oh, that's so cool. And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. And I have to redo the interface because it's kind of embarrassing. But we have like maps like this. This shows how many SLOs are in every program learning outcome, are aligned with every program learning outcome.
Of how many course SLOs are going into each program.
Yeah, right. So the first one, like this blue bar is, there are 38 course learning outcomes aligned with that program learning outcome.
Oh, okay.
Right, and then this one, there's 15. So, and then what's cool is then you can go back and say, well, sometimes that's okay, because sometimes the program learning outcomes are easy to learn, right? They're important, but other times they're not. So if it's clinically I'm going to bet that this green one here that has the most learning outcomes has to do with is clinically competent. That's my guess. And I'm going to guess that this learning outcome is something around ethical behavior.
Attitude, compassion.
Yeah, exactly. Any questions?
How long had your faculty been doing real serious assessment work before it was safe to say, if you think this is bureaucratic, don't do it? It seems like you have to buy into the process before you can make that offer.
Well, it's funny. We forced them all to do the mapping. So they all had done the mapping. That was, WASP was coming and the dean, the chair of every program, you will get this mapping done by this date, do it. And that was done when I came. So all the mapping was done. But, I don't think it's like that if you don't, but sort of the spirit of that, if they don't think this is worthwhile, is that then do something that is, right? I guess that's the part that I didn't leave off. Like, if you don't like the way I'm doing assessment, if the way assessment isn't working for you, then don't do this, but do something that works for you, that improves your student learning. Because it's just not okay to say, we're not going to improve student learning, because, actually that's not true. We have some programs, we have two programs that one has a 98% board pass rate, the other has a 99% board pass rate, and I mostly leave them alone. It's like, okay. But they have like, out of a Likert scale of 5 stars, they have a student satisfaction rate of 4.5 stars. Like, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm really not going to bother you too much about assessment, because they constantly do assessment on their own. The ones who, and they come up with really creative ways that are very different from mine of doing assessment. So it's not just don't do anything, but you just don't have to do what I'm telling you to do, as long as you're doing something to show that you are looking at how well, this is what you say you're doing, and this is what here's what you say you're teaching, and this is what your students are learning, and how are you going to improve that? And that's the basic formula. And it doesn't have to be in all the forms, and WASP doesn't care about the forms or the numbers. WASP wants to know, this is what you're saying you're teaching, and here's evidence that you're actually teaching it. And the evidence cannot be grades. The evidence has to be authentic. Grades are one measure, but they cannot be the only measure because this is how we got into this mess.
It's also, you're not measuring what you're teaching. This speaks to the science issue. You're measuring what the students are learning.
Right.
So if you have students that you're leaving in the dust because they shouldn't be in your class, that needs an intervention.
That needs an intervention. Yeah, and it really starts to shed light on it. I mean, I think there was two big problems in education. One is students weren't learning what faculty thought they were learning. You know, students weren't learning what faculty thought they were teaching. In fact, then that meant that faculty weren't actually teaching what they thought they were teaching. And two, that there was, and is still, a real misalignment between sort of grading criteria and outcomes. So, and I'll give it an example that everybody gets mad at, but I'll give it anyway. So, if the outcome is analyze quantitative and qualitative research, and the rubric is, and in the grading, the teacher says, well, the first thing on the grade is proper spelling and grammar. Well, you know, that's fine for that individual teacher to want to grade for that, because it is obnoxious to have to read papers that don't have proper grammar. But in fact, that isn't getting to the point of if they can analyze the research or not. In other words, there was a lot of emphasis in grades put on things that had nothing to do with the outcome. And this uncovers that and unpacks that. And I'm not saying that grammar isn't important. It is important, but it's just not getting at the quantitative or qualitative analysis. Does that make sense? So I think that this assessment really helps, sort of like what I was saying in the math thing, where ours was analyze qualitative research, and then they can convert milliliters to ounces. Well, how is that relevant? You know, yes, every nurse needs to know how to do that, but that's not in this course learning outcome. So it's really either stop saying this is what you're teaching, or start teaching that. But you can't have both. You can't say I'm teaching this, but our students aren't learning it, because then that means you're not teaching it. That you may be delivering that, but that's not what's being received.
Does this software document the improvements that have been made?
Not really, not very well. That's something that we'd like to do, but we no, because you know we mostly are just living in the now. Like, how are we doing now? How are we doing now? And there's not a lot of reflection of how did we get here. But it is something that I get asked a lot, but not from the accrediting bodies, so I haven't been able to beg for money for that.
Can you speak to any improvements that your campus has worked on as a result of all this mapping?
Well, we are making huge improvements. So one of the things, and you know, it's not only this, it's all it's a whole cocktail of stuff. Our podiatric medicine program went from, I don't remember the numbers, but like more than 10% improvement in the pass rate of their board after an overhaul of their curriculum. So they mapped out their whole curriculum, and they noticed a lot of problems, including pacing. Like their second year students were in school from some crazy thing like 7 in the morning to like 6 at night, and they really looked at that, and then they decided to force the students to go to summer school, so that they were in school less and they had more of a work-life balance than trying to cram everything in. And you know, just kind of that kind of like really substantive changes. And this year they had a 100% pass rate, and before they were having something like 80 some.
Wow.
So like more than 10% of the students passed. So that was huge. Our nursing curriculum decided to switch entirely from how, what we had to, which was a jam-packed curriculum that was just like, these poor nursing students are just hammered, and they decided to make it a concept-based curriculum, and they're throwing out their entire old curriculum and rewriting it almost from scratch to match this concept-based. So concept-based, instead of learning everything about everything, it's like, this is the respiratory system, this is oxygenation, this is how oxygenation works. And then, and then that same oxygenation process, when they take the pediatric course, this is how oxygenation works in pediatrics. This is how it works in the psych units. This is how it works for medical surgery. Here's how, you know, and so it's all relating. And for instance, in the research course, they would have students do research papers on whatever. Now, in the research course, the papers and the readings are done with the other courses, like research pediatrics, and that same paper could be used for both courses. So that they're actually reducing the workload and deepening the learning. Yeah, so it's pretty amazing, and you know, and then we're really trying to push more engaged student engagement, because our school had been pretty traditional.
How are you guys doing that?
Well, we're starting with those mini grants. So we're just starting really small, like do one lesson, assess the change. Then the next year, do one lesson, and really, and then because we publish them in a Canvas in our learning management course, and we have a symposium every year where the faculty present, and even the ones who don't present their reports, we make them into a poster presentation. So we're really sort of disseminating that information and really rewarding participation.
Through the mini grants.
Through the mini grants.
What is the grant?
Well, first of all, our faculty are high paid. They're all doctorate level medical professionals. So, and then we pay higher than our competitors in our area because we want the best. And so we give them $500 for the mini grant. And it's been highly motivating, even for these super well-paid faculty. Any other questions?
I think it might be useful to talk a little bit about the triangulation. You said you triangulate the sample assessment, like the poster that the student did that you could use to assess ethics or compassion, with grades and with board scores. We do have a couple of programs, several programs like campus, that the students have to pass some major thing when they're done. And it seems like it might be something that those faculty could really use, or maybe they understood it perfectly, but I didn't.
Each department does it differently. So, because particularly the board scores, because the board scores are all very idiosyncratic for each kind of board, right? But they can look at areas of weakness, except for podiatric medicine, where they can't. But in the other areas, so they can say, well, your students aren't doing well, and our students aren't doing well in critical thinking, say, or they're not doing well on issues around safety, or they're not doing well on communication. So the boards give us broad areas, they don't give us specific. But so then we look at our grades and we're like, oh my goodness, look at this, people are doing poorly on, you know, oh, look at how low our scores are.
So going back to the SLO assessment from the course that says we are teaching this, and comparing it to the board, which is saying your students are not coming to us having learned it, and that's how you identify an area to work on?
I mean, it's not that easy, actually. Yeah, because we don't teach communication in one course. We teach communication in every course, right? I mean, not every course, but many courses, right? So that's why, you know, communication is a lifelong skill that we all, or compassion, or, so we have to sort of do the analysis at the micro level. And we can say, okay, so they're not doing well in critical thinking. So we don't have a class on critical thinking. Every course should be on critical thinking. And so then we kind of look at, we try and find, each program tries to find where they're weakest in critical thinking and boost that up. Right, and so like.
The triangulation identifies a problem, and then the faculty are motivated to figure out how to improve
That's
in
right.
that particular thing.
In that particular thing. And for us, the board score is a big stick. All right, well,
Thank you.
hey, you're welcome. Yeah, and I invite you guys, if you want to try it, using it. It's a very small investment in time and energy. It's way less work than setting up the big.
And we can do that in what manner?
Well, what we do is we just set up an instance for you, so we have our programmer runs the site, they host it on the Amazon cloud, which is like $100 a year. And then unless you're uploading videos. Oh, and I didn't show you that the student work that you can upload can be video, can be a paper, can be a PowerPoint, a Word, anything you can attach. Anything you can attach to a Facebook page. Yeah, and we set up an instance for you, and then we can give you a template in Google Docs or Excel, whatever works for you of where your mapping is, and then the programmer pushes a button and it automatically comes out as a map. And then you guys can, we integrated it with our single sign-on with our IT department, which you probably would want to do also. But if you don't want to do it, you can, just because sometimes that's not fun, that meeting is not fun, but you can just add your faculty's name to it and give them.
Well, thank you very much, Valerie.